this is Heidi from the Kat Scrappiness design team, and I have a really fun card for you today using this 6x6 paper pad from Echo Park called Fashionista. And I was really inspired by all the cute prints that were inside the paper pad. And this, along with most of the products I'm using today, can be found in the Kat Scrappiness shop. It just has a lot of great fashion themed designs, and I really liked this particular piece of paper. I like the way the words are going in different diagonal directions, and I was just getting really inspired by looking at it and wanted to create a card that definitely worked around this particular pattern. So I chose this piece, and I'm also going to be using a couple of other dies and stamps that can be found at the shop. So along with this, I'm using the Wonky Wavy stitched rectangles from Kat Scrappiness, and I'm using the second smallest rectangle. And along with that, I'll be using a Technique Tuesday stamp set called Say It To Fabulous. And then as an embellishment, I'm going to use a flower from this Mudra stamp set called Wild Rose. So to get started, I'm going to be cutting this 6x6 piece of paper down. And first I want to just cut off the top of it so it's a true 6x6. And what I'm going for is kind of a decoupage inspired look. I'm cutting I cut the 6x6 pad in half, and then I'm cutting each of the pieces at 2 inches. So I have 6 pieces altogether. And I tend to do a lot of straight lines on my cards, so I kind of wanted to challenge myself to do something different. So I'm doing this pattern right here. I'm sort of making like a windmill pattern around the front of the card. I guess it's kind of like decoupage, except I'm not going to be putting anything over the top of it like glue. But I made this pattern for myself so I could follow along and make sure that I get everything the way I want it. So, so I'm just placing all the squares of paper on the front of the note card. And on top of that, I'll be placing the sentiment and the focal point with the stitched rectangle. And I'm just kind of going one direction and then the other direction. And I want to leave a little bit of white space kind of along the edges, just so the paper isn't totally covering the front of the card. Now you could do this with black cardstock too as a note card, but I like the white. I sort of tried the black with it to kind of see what it would look like with this paper, and I always tend to go towards white. It's just clean and fresh looking. So I'm done placing all my pieces, and then next I'm just going to take my scissors and trim off the end, or the ends where they're hanging off the card. And I'm using, these are Tim Holtz non-stick scissors. So they're really helpful when you have pieces of paper that have glue on the back of them, because it doesn't stick to the scissors. And I'm just going to get the last couple of pieces. And there, I really like the way that looks. It has it's something a little bit different. And so next I took a rectangle that I cut out of white cardstock from the Wonky Wavy stitched rectangles, and I'm using the Fabulous word from the Technique Tuesday stamp set. And what I'm doing is stamping it with VersaFine Onyx black ink. And I wanted to have an embossed look, so the ink is a pigment ink, but it's a fast drying pigment ink, and I'm going to stamp it with that and then put clear embossing powder over the top of it and heat emboss it so that you get that shiny look, because I felt like I needed a bold looking sentiment on the front of the card. So I'm just using my Tim Holtz stamp platform so that I can make sure that I get everything lined up perfectly. And I added the UR from the stamp set as well, so it says "You are fabulous." And then I'm just going to stamp it down. And I think I do it a second time just to make sure. I want it nice and bold. And I used the embossing magic powder bag before I stamped everything so that the embossing powder doesn't stick to other parts of the paper. Although since it's clear, you don't have to worry as much about it, but I still like to do it anyway just to make sure. So I'm just putting the clear embossing powder over the sentiment, and this is from Ranger, the embossing powder. And then I'm just going to heat it up, and I always love the way that looks. It's like a big vinyl sticker. So then next I'm going to stamp my flower from the Wild Rose stamp set with some Memento ink onto a piece of white cardstock so that I can color it with Copics. And I just chose the yellow and orange for the inside of the flower. And for the outside, I chose some corally red colors because I thought that those pulled in the coral red from the pattern paper. You can see some of the words in the pattern paper. I think there's black, mint, and then sort of a coral color red. And I'm just going over the whole flower with the lighter color, and then I'll fill in some shadows with the darker red. And I use a lot of florals on my cards. I love the way they look. I'm so inspired by flowers and the different colors and the different shapes. They just are some of my favorites. And I'm just using my scissors to cut out the flower because I'm going to use that as an embellishment on top of the panel that has the sentiment Fabulous on it. And I'm just kind of fussy cutting around. I'm not cutting into the petals. Since the sentiment panel is white, I think it'll blend in, it'll be fine. And I worry that I might cut into the flower petals accidentally. So I'm just kind of cutting around. And I like the way that looks. So next I'm ready to assemble the rest of the card. So I have the You Are Fabulous panel right there. Now I really didn't like the white on top. I just thought that it was missing something. So I decided to take a rectangle from the Never Ending Rectangles die set and cut a piece of black cardstock to back the piece of white. And this is always a great design trick to try if you are making cards and you feel like you're missing something or something doesn't look right. Add a little bit of black to it. It kind of makes everything pop a little, and I think they say in design magazines in your house you should always have a little bit of black in every room to kind of ground the room. So I think that applies in card making too. So now I'm just using some foam tape and putting it on the back of the sentiment panel. And then I'm going to adhere it at an angle on the front of the card. And then I'm going to add the flower with a little bit of foam tape. And then I definitely wanted to add some Kat Scrappiness sequins. So I'm using some sequins from the Retro Christmas sequin mix. And I'm applying them with multi matte medium. And this is a great glue for sequins because it dries clear. And I'm just putting a couple of dabs. And I'm scattering the sequins so that they kind of make a triangle pattern with the flower and with the sentiment. And I like the fact that with these sequin sets, I mean, even though it's for Christmas, you can still grab the colors you want and the sizes you like and add them to other cards throughout the year. So it's a great value. And there you go. I'm just kind of spacing them out a little bit. So that's it. And like I said, all the products can be found at the Kat Scrappiness shop. I thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.